it's very surreal, really, because we actually knew about 40 minutes beforehand that the aircraft had taken off from Argentina and were actually coming to attack us. And this is all down to SAS and people like that who were ashore in Argentina, who was picking up the voice traffic from the operations departments of the Air Force in Argentina. Them signalling back to GCHQ in UK, to Whitehall, from Whitehall back down to HMS Coventry via the Admiral on the aircraft carrier. So we were told that the aircraft who were taking off were coming to attack the ships north of Pebble Island. There was only 2 ships north of Pebble Island, HMS Coventry and HMS Broadsword, so we knew we were going. So at 6 o'clock in the evening, I mean, before 6 o'clock, the captain came over, told us what was happening, and said that at 6 o'clock we would go to action stations. So it was a very pleasant, everybody walked off to there was no rushing around. War films you see when they go to action stations, everybody's rushing. Well, we knew well in advance that we were going to go to action stations, so everybody was closed up at action stations at 6 o'clock when the sounds for action stations was called. And then it was just a question of waiting. We tracked the aeroplanes from Argentina across to the Falklands. They disappeared over West Falkland. And once they'd gone over the back of the land, it became very difficult because the radar hadn't got the ability them days to be able to find a moving target over land. So once the aircraft had ended up over the land, we lost track of them, and the only time that we actually picked them up again on radar was just as they broke the land and came over the surface of the sea, which was 7 miles away. Too close for a sea dart, really, because you need to be able to pick up a...
So was Broadsword, because they had close...
She had close range weapons. In actual fact, we fired a sea dart, but we fired a sea dart manually, more or less straight at the aeroplane as it was coming in. They also tried firing 4-5. One of the problems that happened, the HMS Coventry took the avoiding action and turned to present the smallest target area to the incoming aircraft, and in doing so went across the automatic arcs of Broadsword's close range weapon systems, which immediately shut down. Circumstances. We were working with a ship, doing a joint operation with a ship which had never been practiced. Just as the aircraft come in to attack, there's a broadcast made, and everybody takes up what is trying to be the safest position. So you
hit the deck.
Yes, I lay down on the deck alongside the machinery control console. The engineer off the watch leans forward as if he was in an aircraft, so that you've not got a straight bones. You're all sort of flexible. So if you do get hit and explosions do happen, then at least you're not going to cause yourself any more damage.
Oh, okay.
And then once the attack's gone over, you broadcast comes up and you stand up and get on with it.
But then there was the attack that didn't.
It didn't, and we knew it didn't because we heard the thud as the bomb came in, as one of the bombs came in.
And how close, sort of on the ship, how far away were you as to from where the bomb penetrated?
Well, the bomb penetrated into the forward auxiliary machinery space, and the machinery control room is over the top of the junction between the forward engine room and the after engine room. The bomb came through the forward auxiliary machinery space and into the forward engine room and hit hit the air compressor. So at a little angle, probably about 20 feet away.
Okay, I didn't realise it was that close.
Yeah, when the bomb exploded, we were probably about 20 feet away from us.
And you say it was just a thud?
That's what you heard as it penetrated the ship's hull.
Okay, but slightly more than a thud when it exploded.
Oh, Well, the first indication that we got in the machinery control room was we lost the air compressor. The air compressor failed. So we broadcast from the control room to the forward engine room, told them to go and have a look at what the problem was with the air compressor. And then it went off with a big bang, and it really was a big bang. The machinery control console, which weighs about 9 tons, was moved from its normal location in the machinery control room about 4 foot aft.
Goodness.
It was blown open completely. All the wiring was sheared off. All the control wiring. There was 440 volts just sparking away quite merrily. I think I was unconscious for several seconds for a period of time, because from the bang, I then remember coming round or being aware of a large weight over my back, which turned out to be a piece of machinery called a dynamic data recorder. And we had the pack of playing cards that you get in Christmas crackers. We had a pack of them on the machinery control console in a cup, and they were all laying on the floor. So they'd actually been blown up, fluttered around, and come to rest on the floor. So you've got this great huge piece of machinery sitting on top of you.
Were you able to move, or get away from it? Or?
Yes, I got away from it. But then, you went around the back of the machinery control console, and I say all the panel doors were all blown open, and there was wires stripped out.
And was anyone else who was with you, any of your colleagues, were they injured?
No, we were very lucky. Machinery control room, we all survived. We had no physical injuries. However, in DCHQ, there was some severe injuries, and in the combined technical office, which was an extension of DCHQ, there was one person was killed. It was very obvious that there was absolutely no way that any of this machinery was ever going to work again. Not from where we were in the control room.
And are you hearing the captain? Are you getting any instructions?
No,
Everything's gone now.
We've lost all broadcasts. The machinery control console is got lots of lights on it. It was looking like a Christmas tree, because every single one of them was either flashing red, orange, or green. Its positioning, it was quite obvious that it was never going to. We couldn't control anything from there, so we left. We evacuated. We went aft to the after damage control base, and from there we went on. It became so obvious that the ship was in a dire state. We needed to get away from the people who were in the after damage control base, because they needed to do their job. So we went up into the hangar, at which point the ship was starting to list. One of my guys, who was the engineer officer of the watch, we found the propellers were still turning. Why? Because all the controls had been broken. But the actual final fuel stop is on a Bowden cable. Luckily enough, that hadn't broken, so he went back down to the control room and tripped both engines. So we actually stopped the propellers from turning before the ship went over, so that at least we weren't going to be have propellers thrashing around in the water. But it was quite obvious that we were in a very, very serious situation. I met the MEO, and he said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And we were talking about it. I said, "Well, let's see if it stabilises. If it stabilises, then we can perhaps go back down and find out if there is anything that we can do. If not, at which point the Fleet Air Arm decided that they were going to try and fly the helicopter off before it got beyond its limitations on the deck. By the time they'd run the helicopter up, the deck was out of bounds because of the list of the ship was out. So they shut the helicopter down, and the helicopter was still lashed down on the deck when the ship went down.
So have all the crew now come? Is everyone on what's left of the deck? And how soon do people start getting into life rafts?
We were, I suppose it was about 25 minutes after the initial bang that it became blatantly obvious that the only way for all of us was to be, nobody actually gave an order to abandon ship.
Oh, okay.
It was
just clear.
It was clear that, you know, when the flight deck started to lap in the water, and you needed to step over the guardrails on the starboard side, otherwise you were going to slide across the upper deck of the ship and into the sea on the port side, that, you know, if the ship had stabilised at that point, then we could have perhaps come back on board and done something about it. But for safety at that time, get into life raft, and then, if it's stable, come back. So that, you know, it was a unanimous, universal decision. Nobody actually, I don't think any single person made the decision to launch life rafts.
So once you had got on the life raft, where did you go to?
I would say I was picked up by a helicopter from the life raft I was in and taken to the broadsword, which is quite surreal because broadswords still at action stations because the Argentinians are still flying. So
they're still flying around? Well, not directly above.
Not directly above, but they're still flying.
Okay.
Because shortly later, sometime after the Coventry was hit, Atlantic Conveyor got hit, and so I've been for a swim in the South Atlantic, lifted out by a helicopter, ends up in the on HMS Broadsword, goes for a nice hot shower, gets issued with a survivor's piece of clothing, and sit in the passageway whilst they are still fighting a war. They're still at action stations, and you think, and you're absolutely futile. You are now.
And also, you're dealing with the shock of your ship.
Yes. Yeah.
Which you've seen sinking.
And people, because you don't know. There were helicopters were all over the place. People were getting taken here, there. You knew some people who were hurt. You knew some people had been injured, but you didn't know specifics. And yes, there was a lot of us on Broadsword, but when you actually started to count them up and make a list of them, it's not as many as what there should be. And then you got people, such and such got taken to such and such, you know. And this is all hearsay. It's not clarified. There's no confirmation that this is the truth. We knew from the engine room side that we'd had severe injuries in the forward engine room, and the chances for anybody who've come out of the forward engine room was probably zero. The after engine room, the bulkhead had been blown through between the forward and after engine room when the bomb went off. We knew that there'd been a fireball had gone through the after engine room. We knew that certain people had escaped. We knew that other people hadn't. But we didn't know whether they'd been killed, died, or whether they subsequently escaped later. It turned out at the end of it that everybody in the after engine room did get out, although some of them were severely injured, or pretty severely injured. It took me a long, long time to realise that I had, I suppose, post-traumatic stress. And I'd left the Navy and I was working and I was driving, and I would be driving along the road and a face of one of the guys who died in the Falklands would flash in front of me. And I thought, very, very, I found I was, in that period of time when I was driving on my own, I would be recollecting what happened. I went for some counselling, and it allowed me or made me capable of actually putting these events in the right filing cabinet there were a long period of time when you actually still thought that you had failed because you didn't bring your ship home, because you actually hadn't done the job that you were paid and taught and had learnt to do. You had actually personally failed. And it took a long, long time to get over, I won't say get over that, but to come to terms with that in actual fact you've been really very successful.